This is a Film Stories original podcast. Welcome back, everybody, to the Xcast. The truth is in here. I'm Tony Black, your host, and it's another different episode today because instead of looking at a specific X-file, we have another interview with a very esteemed writer who has been kind enough to give up his time to come and speak to us about one of his contributions to an X-Files piece of work and his career in general. So it's my thrill to introduce New York Times bestselling author Greg Cox.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you very much for giving up your time to come on the Xcast. Just to begin, I'm going to ask you what I call the 5 questions of X, just to start off with every guest, and just to get your ideas about any specific X-Files fandom. So, the first question is, when did you first watch or discover the X-Files?
Oh, during its original run. I remember watching the first episode way back when. Now, I probably shouldn't admit this. The truth of the matter is I wasn't blown away by the first episode, kind of fell away from it. And then all my friends were telling me, people I trusted, no, you really have to watch it. It's really good. And then I came back to the fold and got hooked. The first one, it was like, oh, this is the usual UFO abduction stuff. I've seen this before. And I was, jaded or something. But no, my friends started telling me, no, you really need to watch the show. And oh, wow. And then I started watching it and watched it religiously all the way through the Dog and Arrays years to the very end.
Oh, you were very committed then. You stayed.
And the movies. Okay.
Yeah. Have you watched any of the new season yet?
Yeah. Here in America, we've seen the first 2. The third one actually airs tonight.
That's right.
My DVR is set. Okay.
Excellent.
And I will be foregoing Supergirl to watch X-Files. I will have to catch up with Supergirl on the rerun.
Are you enjoying the new season of the X-Files, by the way, from the ones you've sseen?
Yeah, it's been fun. And I mentioned the nostalgic thrill when they started playing the opening credits, dude.
Yeah.
Oh my God, they're back,
They're back at last.
I hear tonight is supposed to be like the best of the first 3, at least according to all the reviews, so I'm very psyched to see it.
Yes.
Especially since the teaser at least was hinting at some sort of Kolchak homage, and I'm an old-time Night Stalker fan as well.
Yes, it does look that way. It looks like a good one. I think tonight is the one that's called Mulder and Scully Meet the Weir Monster. So, yes, I hope you enjoy that when you do get a chance to watch it.
How can you skip something called, Meets the Weir Monster? Okay,
Exactly, yeah. Okay, second question. What would you say your favourite episode of the X-Files is?
Home.
Oh, great choice. We did that recently, actually, on the Xcast. Yeah.
Which means I am a sick and depraved person, but yes, my favorite X-Files episode is easily Home.
Have you got any specific reason why?
Oh, it's just so creepy and scary. I will never be able to hear that Johnny Mathis song, Wonderful, Wonderful.
Definitely.
Yeah. Again, I'm walking through the supermarket and it's playing on the music, and I start thinking about cannibalistic, inbred hillbillies,
As you do, yeah.
Which is probably not the original intent. Okay.
Absolutely. That is a great episode, and quite a few people have said Home over the years. And in fact, there was an interview with Glenn Morgan and James Wong, who obviously have returned for the new season, talking about how Home is still considered to be one of the most darkest and shocking pieces of television in the last 20, 30 years. And you can understand it, really, can't you?
I have one sister who will never forgive me for making her watch it. Okay.
Okay, that's the second question. Third question, what would you say your favourite season of the X-Files would be?
Ooh, I don't know. I know when I was doing research for the short story we're going to be talking about, I went out and rewatched season 4 because that seemed like a nice, good, that was a really strong season with lots of good standalone Monster of the Week episodes, including Home. So, yeah, season 4 was like they were really, really clicking there. Everything was set up. Mulder and Scully were a well-oiled mechanism. The conspiracy was moving along, and a lot of good standalone, Monster of the Week episodes.
Have to say that that tends to be one of the big consensuses, really, that season 4, it's either usually, people's answers are usually season 3, season 4, or season 2. So, yeah, I think I would agree. I think that's a really good choice. Okay, the next question is, who would you say your favourite character on the X-Files is? Now, this doesn't have to just be Mulder and Scully. It could be anybody. It could be a guest character. It could be a support. Anyone.
Well, I actually found when I was working on the story that I really enjoyed writing Scully, of all people, rather than Mulder, because just... You know, that sort of skeptical attitude, and my God, that poor woman. I mean, that was not her quest. She got sucked into this, you know.
Yeah.
It's like every episode, it's like, Mulder, what are we doing standing in the middle of a desert at 3 o'clock in the morning looking at goat carcasses? You know, I found myself very much identified with Scully rewatching the show and writing the story, and her, you know, she has the patience of a saint. Okay.
Yeah, she does. Finally, then, the last question of this 5 is there any particular moment in the show's history that stands out for you, like a scene or a specific piece of an episode or something that stayed with you over the years?
Well, going back to home, one of the moments I really remember in that episode is not actually one of the really creepy, icky incest moments or anything, but that poor scene where the sheriff's wife is hiding under the bed.
Right.
And then the puddle of blood is moving towards her and she's trying to be quiet, but there's no way you can be quiet as your husband's blood is pouring under the bed towards you, and you just know she's going to scream, and it ends very badly. And yeah, that scene is like just terrifying. Yeah,
I think that's definitely, again, a really sort of, you know, scene that stays with you. Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for answering the 5 questions of X. That gives everyone a little taster of your X-Files fandom. So let me move on and ask you the questions you're here for, really, because obviously one of the main reasons you're on the Xcast, just to start off with, is to talk about your contribution to the writing in the X-Files, because you have contributed to the upcoming second anthology book, which is called The Truth Is Out There, which is a follow-on from the Trust No One anthology that came out last year, or I believe it was. And really, we're all excited to find out what your contribution is, how it came about, and tell us a little bit about the story to come. So how did this all come about then, Greg?
Well, it all started when Jonathan Mayberry, who is the editor of these X-Files anthologies, basically contacted me and said, "Hey, Greg, you know, you interested in joining the party, as it were?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Absolutely. Hey, get a chance to write an X-Files story. That sounded like fun." The book itself, by the way, is coming out in a couple of weeks. And in fact, I'm told the physical copies of it actually exist.
Oh, excellent.
I am haunting my mailbox waiting for my contributor's copy to arrive, though Jonathan has been showing off his on Facebook. So apparently it is a book, and I think it's supposed to go on sale like on the 15th or so.
That's right. Yeah, it's very soon, isn't it? I think we get it in the UK on the 28th. So right. I'll be spending my wages I get paid that day, so that's one of the first things I spend it on.
For all I know, I'm still waiting for the mailman to show up today. It could land on my front porch this afternoon. Okay, but no, I stayed very clear of all the complicated conspiracy stuff and just wrote a standard Monster of the Week episode. It is set roughly in the 4th season, before Scully's whole cancer arc kicks in. I just wanted to do a sort of classic, you know, Mulder and Scully investigate strange goings-on, you know, story. It takes place in the Pacific Northwest, and it involves mummies.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I was actually surprised in prepping for this story. I went through and read all my X-Files episode guides, because it had been a few years, looking to see and refresh my memory what had been done and what hadn't been done. Oh, right, they did Bigfoot already. Oh, they did Chupacabra already. And I was shocked to find out that, at least on the show, I can't speak for all the comic books and such. So, okay, then I tried to come up with what I thought was a nice new take on the mummy story rather than just having the traditional thing. But yes, it's a mummy story. Oddly enough, they had never done on the TV show. So.
Yes, they hadn't, no. There'd been, like, I think, variations where people might have been mummified in certain other ways, but yeah, there'd never been a traditional mummy. That's
your old-fashioned Egyptian bandaged mummy they had not done. No, so
absolutely. Oh, that sounds really, really exciting. That's really good. Would you ever look to write a full X-Files novel if the opportunity ever came along? And if you did, do you know what kind of tale you might write? What kind of story? Have you ever given it any thought?
Oh, you know, I haven't given it thought, but yes, I'd certainly be available if the, you know, offer came along. It would probably be a standard Monster of the Week episodic story, just again, because you kind of want to cede the complicated conspiracy stuff to the show, and you don't want to step on their toes. I do remember one of the ideas I was flirting with when I was considering ideas for this was doing something maybe with the Mothman, who's, again, I was looking for urban legends and things they hadn't done. And the Mothman might be fun. I actually met John Keel, who wrote the Mothman Prophecies several years ago, and had lunch with him. So I've got an interest in that.
Oh, that's exciting. Definitely.
But that just off the top of the head, that was one of the ideas. Was like, do I want to do the Mummy? Do I want to do the Mothman? And I kind of fell on the Mummy idea, but that was sort of my backup plan. Indeed, my backup plan, I think, because the way it works, you submit an outline to, Fox, and they give you your approval before you start writing the story. And, it was actually very, very clear. They cleared the Mummy story with no issues. But if they'd bounced that and said, what else you got, I might have gone to Mothman.
That's really exciting. Yeah, because the Mothman, it's strange, actually, that they never actually did that in the show either, because it sounds like something, you could have imagined them taking on, because it's a well-known American myth, an American legend. So
yeah, they did the Jersey Devil, they did the Chupacabra.
Yeah.
I think, they didn't get around to Mothman.
It is odd.
Yeah. They did like a lake monster,
Yeah, they did lots of things. So yeah, that's really interesting. That's I hope one day you get approached, because there hasn't been that many novels actually of the X-Files lately in the last recent years. But with the new miniseries, we may find that more will come out there, really. And it's just exciting that we've got this anthology story that's coming up with a really great load of writers. So yeah, it's excellent.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to reading the other stories in the book, which of course I have not read yet, so.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be fun for you as a reader then as well, not just contributing. That's great. That's really good. So then let's get into a little bit more about you. Obviously, you've been writing now for many years. You've been published for probably over 20 years now, if not longer. So what was it that made you want to be a writer? And what was the actual first piece of work you ever had published?
Okay, in retrospect, it seems to me that I was always destined to be a writer. When I throw my brain back, I remember I was scribbling stories in my notebooks in grade school and writing what we would now think of as fanfic back in junior high, even though I don't think that word was around back then. But yes, it was fanfic. But strangely enough, growing up, I did not think of being a writer as a career. It was a hobby. I scribble my little stories and then stick them in a drawer somewhere. I actually got a degree in chemistry at college.
Okay.
I had intents to be a chemist until I discovered that I was actually much better at science fiction than real science. I was a mediocre chemist at best. And in fact, notice how come I'm getting A's in all my creative writing courses and C's in all my chemistry courses? Why did I major in chemistry again? And then the other big thing was when I started discovered science fiction fandom in college and started going to conventions and actually meeting writers and editors. It sort of sinks in, these are actual like flesh and blood living people, and people do this. And how does this work? You have an agent. And I started learning more about it. Was really sort of an epiphany to actually meet people who had done this and did this in living and realize, this is actually an option.
Yeah.
And I started sending out stories and got lots of rejection slips. But slowly, started selling stories to magazines. There was semi-pro zines like Fantasy Book, and then magazines like Amazing Stories and Mike Shane Mystery Magazine. And then eventually I was convinced by I went to the Clarion West Science Fiction Writing Workshop, which is a prestigious science fiction writing workshop, here in the States.
Yeah.
It was a big impact on me. And one of my teachers, David Hartwell, who sadly died last week.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Actually, David was very influential in my career. He was the one who told me, Greg, if you're really serious about this. At the time, I was doing the starving writing thing and bussing tables, and washing dishes in Seattle while dabbling. If you're really serious about this, Greg, you need to move to New York City and get heavily involved in New York publishing. And, in fact, David, I worked out a deal where I moved to New York City from Seattle, Washington, which was a long way, and actually became David's nanny. The deal was I would be his nanny and take care of his kids, and in exchange, he would introduce me to New York publishing and, take me around and show me the ropes. And eventually, I became a full-time science fiction editor who dabbled in writing, and then gradually segued from being a full-time editor who did a little writing on the side to being a full-time writer who still does a little editing on the side.
Right.
But that's the short version. I joke I started out as David Hartwell's nanny. So.
That's great that you always felt like you were meant to do this, and it's great that you have a mentor along the way who helps you get there and everything like that. So that must be something that you pass on to other writers as well. And have you got any specific? Is there any specific advice you always give, like first time writers or young writers who maybe contact you or you meet along the way?
Well, the one thing I get a lot of questions about tie-in novels. media tie-in novels, novelisations, because that's what I mostly specialized in for the last 20 years or so.
Sure.
And there's a lot of misconceptions about that. It's a weird little niche of publishing. A lot of people have the weird idea that, you wake up in the morning, you write a, X-Files novel, and then somehow you arrange to get it published. You send it to the publisher and they wave their magic publishing wand and they work out a deal with the studio. Some people think that, I've had people ask me, well, how much do you have to pay the studios to write Star Trek novels? No, they pay me. Okay. But the way it works is these are not initiated by the writer usually. What it works is, a publisher makes a deal with the studio to publish X number of Warehouse 13 novels. And then the publisher or the editor gets on the phone and calls one of the usual suspects, me. And we write the story in conjunction. I'm sort of, you're a hired gun. It's a work for hire project. But it breaks my heart because people come to me, hi, I've written a 500-page Spider-Man novel. How do I get it published? Well, you can't. That's really not how it works. And there's a whole process where you write an outline first, they approve it, then you send it in the story, and they ask for changes. And in the case of, to bring it back to X-Files, it began with Jonathan Mayberry, who is a notable science fiction and horror writer and editor. He called me up and said, hey, Greg, IDW is doing has got the rights to do a line of X-Files anthologies. Are you available? And I said, count me in. And then I wrote an outline for the Mummy story. He sent it in to the powers that be at Fox. They approved it. I wrote the story. They asked for some minor tweaks to the story. And that's how it usually works. It usually begins, I'm in a comfortable position now where I've been doing this long enough that when, we need somebody to write a novelization of Godzilla. Well, let's call Greg and see if he's available because I'm reliable. So,
yes, yeah.
As I often say, when it comes to writing, especially media tie-in novels, talent is important. Reliability is almost more important. You want somebody who's going to not be a prima donna who understands how it works.
Yeah, absolutely.
But at this point, I'm in the nice position of, like I said, I'm one of the usual suspects. Well, we need someone to write a Batman story. Well, call Greg. He's done Batman before.
Well, it's interesting because I was going to ask about this. You've obviously written novels that are based on novelizations of movies, and that's a really interesting thing, as you've explained. Often the way the system works. So what is it like? Because obviously you've written novelizations for Godzilla, as you say, for The Dark Knight Rises, for Man of Steel. When you're approached for those, what is the process? I assume you get access to the script. Do you get it ahead of time? How does that work?
Another thing, there's a lot of misconceptions about. It starts the same way with a phone call from Titan Books saying, "Hey, Greg, do you want to novelize Man of Steel?" And me saying, "Oh, hell yeah." And then we work out some stuff with the money stuff.
Sure.
But no, the way it works is generally I have never seen the movie before I've written the novelization.
Okay.
A lot of people think, well, you must have seen the movie. No, I saw Godzilla when it opened at my local multiplex like everybody else.
Right.
I am writing the book at the same time the movie is being made because you want the book to coincide with the movie. So usually what I am working with is the most recent copy of the script I can get my hands on. Whatever script changes, they may send me along the way, and there are sometimes rewrites. Yes, sometimes this can be stressful. Yeah. Bad news, Greg. They've shot a new ending. We're sending you the pages.
Oh, my God.
By Monday. Okay.
Is it really that tight a deadline? Do you sometimes get that?
Sometimes, yes.
Wow.
And whatever pre-production art I can, advanced photo stills, pre-production art, sketches I can pry out of the movie people. Sometimes I have made trips out to Burbank, to Hollywood to visit the studio. I've never actually visited the set, but sometimes on Man of Steel, I got to fly out and they showed me some of the props and the costumes and the production art and everything in advance, which was kind of cool, just so I could thorough. And sometimes the secrecy is incredibly intense. That's the one thing that's changing. I have been doing this for a while. Daredevil, the Ben Affleck movie, was the first movie I ever novelized.
Right.
And if anything, the secrecy has gotten more and more intense. Now everything has to be encrypted. Everything is in Dropbox. There's been a few times where I have not been allowed to have a copy of the script in my possession. I have to fly out to Hollywood and they give me this script and lock me in a room basically.
Wow.
Say, hey, you have 3 days to take as many notes as you can on the script. But, and at the end of the day, a nice girl comes and puts the script back in a vault, On Dark Knight Rises, gosh, that was the end of the trilogy. I cannot blame Warner Brothers for being positively paranoid about secrecy since, there's a cottage industry in the internet out there of, spoiler sites.
Of course.
But not only was the security so tight, I remember I showed up like, no, you will be encrypting all your files. I'm going, absolutely, yes. And I'm going like, how the hell do I do that? I'm on Google that night. How do you encrypt files? I wasn't even allowed to read the last 15 pages of the script until right before the book went to press.
Wow.
I had to make 2 trips out to California. I went out once, and they gave me the whole script except for the last 15 pages, and I wrote the book. And then I think the movie came out like in July. I had to fly out again in May, and they finally gave me the last 15 pages of the script to read. And I wrote like the last 10,000 words of the book, while holed up in a Best Western hotel in Burbank, living on coffee and Subway sandwiches in about, 3 days, But that was the most extreme. But I don't blame them for wanting to guard that secret, But yeah, the secrecy has gotten more and more intense. Everything is like, okay, I was actually amazed they actually sent me the script for Godzilla, although it had a secret code name. It wasn't called Godzilla, In fact, it's probably I can reveal now. The name on the script was Nautilus.
Oh, okay. Nautilus, which is the Captain Nemo submarine, isn't it, Nautilus?
Yeah, that was the code name for the project.
That's quite a cool code name, got to be honest.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm working with whatever materials I can get from the movie people before I actually see the movie. And invariably when I see the movie, there's always oh, wow, I got that right. Or, oh, that's not quite how I imagined it. Or, wow, no one told me that character was a woman. Okay,
Well, that maybe accounts for the fact that when people, quite often I read about this, and when people read novelisations of the movie, they discover things in it that maybe don't end up in the movie, and they sometimes find that it's an enhanced experience when they read the novelisation, because then they go, oh, well, actually, I understand a piece of something that the script or the actual finished product didn't really make clear. So quite often, I think they can be really interesting extra official pieces to the puzzle.
Well, yeah, a lot of times, like I said, there are scenes that are in the script that get cut out and but make it into the novelization. And sometimes you have to argue for that because you've got to pad out part of the challenge is taking like a 100-page script and padding it out to a 350-page novel. I remember one case on one of the Underworld movies. I did the first 3 Underworld movies. There was a scene that was in the script, and I put it in the book, and I got a note from the studio saying, hey, Greg, we want you to cut this scene out because we've cut it out of the movie. And I actually quibbled at that point. I said, well, okay, can we please keep it in the book? Because it kind of fleshes things out a little bit. It's a nice scene. And I really, and it doesn't contradict anything that comes, later. And they said, well, hang on, let us talk to the director. And then the director came back with, oh, it turns out the director plans to restore that scene to the director's cut anyway. So yes, by all means, put it in the book,
You write obviously extensively, as you've mentioned, in established universes. What is the appeal of playing in those kind of sandboxes, really, and getting to write your own elements of those universes?
Well, part of it, of course, is that I'm a hardcore fanboy at heart. There is a part of me that, still goes, oh my God, I get to write the X-Files. Oh my God, I get to write Batman. And they're paying me, My not so guilty secret is I would be showing up on opening night in line to see the new X-Files movie, to see the new Godzilla movie, even if I wasn't professionally connected to it. I'd be watching X-Files tonight, even if I hadn't written a Mummy story.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is very fun. There's a nostalgic thrill to be able to finally get to play around with these characters. In fact, sometimes I can't even watch a new TV show without sort of thinking, I wonder if I was thinking of ideas for Warehouse 13 novels long before I got the phone call from Pocketbook saying, hey, Greg, would you like to write a, Warehouse 13 novel?
Yeah.
Well, as it happens, I've got some notes here already.
That's great. It's a great position to be in, isn't it? That you're being a fan allows you to have that, you're already creating stories about it. So then if you ever do get, like you say, that call, you're ahead of the game, I suppose.
Yeah, and it gives you also an excuse, like I said, when I had not watched The X-Files for several years, they gave me an excuse to go back and watch all of season 4 again, just to get myself back into the X-Files groove and reabsorb the voices of the characters.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great. Is there any specific universe or any specific property that you haven't written for that you would love to have a go at?
Well, Star Wars is still the Mount Everest I have yet to climb. And also from a nostalgic level, I would love to do something with the old Universal monsters, Frankenstein, Dracula, the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Yeah.
I lobbied aggressively to do Van Helsing, but didn't get that job. Probably just as well in retrospect. But at the time, I was excited. But, that we keep crossing like ships in the night. It will happen eventually.
I think you'd have done a better job with the Van Helsing novel than the film. Admittedly, that's not difficult, but I think it's a shame, really, that didn't happen because the film was a disappointment.
On paper, that sounded like a great idea. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are on my sort of list of things to do. I just finished last week a Planet of the Apes story.
Yes.
Which is another franchise checked off my bucket list. That was a case where I had a really tight schedule, and my head said, no, you don't really have time to do a Planet of the Apes story too. But, oh, God, I'll kill myself forever if I don't write a Planet of the Apes story. So I found time.
I don't blame you, definitely. You've probably, of course, in many respects, the most prolific, as I mentioned earlier before we recorded, within the Star Trek universe. Do you have a particular favourite set of characters or era from that show that you enjoy writing? And what is it about Star Trek that hooks you in the most?
I cannot remember when I was not a Star Trek fan. I am old enough to remember watching the original show during its original run on NBC with my dad when I was a kid, so
that's nice.
And it's been a big part of my life growing up, conventions, all the movies, etc. So yeah, the original series is still near and dear to my heart. I have written for every version of Star Trek except Enterprise, but left to my own devices, like I said, that the original series, Kirk, Spock, McCoy, is the one I grew up on, the one I watched over and over again in syndication, and where the episodes are burned into my brain forever, So I've enjoyed writing every version of Star Trek, but left to my own devices. And indeed, for the last several years, I've done nothing but TOS, or the original series, as we call it,
Yeah, although you did get a bit of a blend with the book, sorry, I forget the name, where you had Seven of Nine and Kirk.
That was No Time Like the Past.
No Time Like the Past, that's right.
And I'm still amazed they let me get away with that. But I get to do a, Kirk 7 of 9 team up,
Cool.
That was fun. In fact, I hadn't watched Voyager for several years. I went back and watched the whole season of Voyager just to get myself back into the Voyager groove and remember 7 of 9. That was also cool because my one and only Voyager novel was written during the first season, back in the Kess era, as it were.
Yeah.
So I'd never actually written 7 of 9 before, so I'd always sort of felt that I missed out there a little bit. So I finally got to do 7 of 9.
That's great. Well, speaking of Star Trek, I mean, from your personal perspective, are you much of a fan of the Abrams verse as it's known, the rebooted chronology, or are you much more of an original timeline fan?
I am not a purist about this. No, I quite like the 2009 movie. I've seen it several times. I think it's great. I listen to the soundtrack all the time. No, I think they did. I think they really did sort of capture the feel of the original series. And the cast is amazing. I'm having a senior moment here, but the guy who plays McCoy is phenomenal. He's
Carl Urban, yeah.
Yes, Carl Urban from Xena. Yes, how did I forget that?
He was in Xena.
But yeah, oh my God, he's channeling DeForest Kelley, know. But no, I'm quite enjoying the new one, and I'm looking forward to Star Trek Beyond this summer.
Let's hope it does it justice, the 50 years.
Because we are the big 50th anniversary.
That's absolutely right, yeah. Obviously, as well, looking at your bibliography, you've written a couple of non-fiction books as well in your time, haven't you? Exploring subjects such as Bigfoot or vampire fiction. Was there anything that drew you to writing some non-fiction and going in that direction? And what did you feel? Were you happy with the finished product?
Yeah. In fact, technically, the first book I ever wrote or sold was, in fact, a book called The Transylvanian Library, which was a guide to vampire fiction.
That's right, yeah.
And that was published by a small academic press. It is woefully out of date now. I think it covered pretty much every vampire story written up to about 1987. Pre-Buffy, pre-True Blood, People occasionally ask me, are you ever going to update it? I can't. I've looked, it exploded. There was a time up to about 1987, you could read every single vampire book ever written. Now there's like 6 a month. Vampire romance novels, vampire kids novels, Buffy novelizations. It would be a full-time job. But no, I am an old-time horror fan. I love vampires. I was exposed to Dark Shadows at an impressionable age. Grew up watching the old Universal movies and the, Hammer films on, Nightmare Theater on Friday nights. So yeah, I'm a vampire buff, and vampires have a tendency to keep creeping into my work. So yeah, that was a project. Somehow I was reading all these vampire books, and I decided I'd write a guide to them.
See, I think that would still be a good thing to read, because if you think about it, vampires, everyone just thinks of Buffy nowadays, or like you say, True Blood. So if there was a book that was everything before that, it would probably be still very useful to a lot of people to see a lot of the things that people may now miss.
I get cranky and curmudgeonly when I have to remind people that there were vampires before Twilight. Okay.
True.
Yeah, it's not all Twilight. No.
Obviously, as well, given the X-Files anthology you've contributed to and all of the short stories you've written over time, do you prefer doing short stories to writing actual novels, or is it something that you do as like a top-up? And have you got any particular favourite short stories that you've ever written?
Let's see. These days, I tend to do novels more. It's kind of hard to force myself back into short story mode because I'm used to trying to expand everything. On the X-Files story, we had a tight 7,000 word limit for the stories. That was the maximum. And I found myself straining against that a little bit because, no, I'm sorry, I'm confused. No, sorry, it was the Planet of the... I'm getting my projects mixed up. I'm always juggling mini balls. No, Planet of the Apes had the tight 7,000 word maximum. I can't remember what X-Files was. Actually, because publishing has delays and publishing has long lead time. I wrote the X-Files story like last summer. Right. And I've written like 3 novels since then. But I'm used to writing novels, trying to expand out things and flesh things out. And, I got to add a subplot and get into this character. No, short stories, you got to be more compact. I'm used to sort of, I have to watch myself that I'm not hired to write a 5,000 word Zorro story. It starts to turn into 15,000 words,
Yeah.
I think like a novelist these days, and I have to sort of force myself to keep things short and streamlined on short stories. But I've written lots of short stories. I still enjoy writing them. My only contributions to Buffy were 2 Buffy stories many years ago. I wrote a Xena short story, which was my one chance I got to dip my toe into the Xena universe. And once in a rare while, I will write like an original story that isn't actually based on a TV show or comic book. I wrote a story called The Homework Horror, about a little boy who is terrified of the number 5, which people still seem to remember fondly. Okay.
Well, I was actually going to ask you about this as well, in that you're obviously, as you say, you're most well known for actually being involved in established universes. But yeah, you have written original things. And are there any, like you said, are there any specific, favourites? Or is there anything you're fond of having written that is your own original work?
Hard to say. What my New Year's resolution every year is to try to squeeze in some more original work, and every year it gets away from me and I'm not complaining, this is a good problem to have. I've got to write a librarian's novel and a Planet of the Apes novel, and Pocket Books wants me to write a 50th anniversary Star Trek novel, and somehow the year gets away from me. But at some point I do want to squeeze in. I've got outlines and notes for original books and novels and things around, I just need to find time to squeeze them in. I just finished Planet of the Apes story, and my next project is a new Librarians novel based on the Librarians TV show, which is due in June. So I need to get going on that. So
yeah. Speaking of, in fact, my last question really is, tell us about some of your upcoming projects then, because you've mentioned several of them. You've mentioned the 50th anniversary Star Trek tie-ins, the Librarians, Planet of the Apes. Can you tell us any more about them? Have you got anything else that's in the pipeline?
Sure. The coming soon segment. Okay. Well, the X-Files collection comes out in 2 weeks.
Yes.
I also have, at the end of February, a Star Trek novella coming out called Miasma. This is interesting, is that it will be available as an ebook only.
Oh, okay.
Pocket Books is experimenting now with ebook only novellas. This is like 30,000 words. It's called Miasma, and it's set during the movie era. So it's somewhere short Star Trek movie. Saavik is around, Sulu is gone.
Okay.
Spock is older and wiser. Then, in June, this summer, we have an exciting project. We're doing a 3-book 50th anniversary Star Trek trilogy. And I wrote this in collaboration with, in fact, 3 other authors. I'm writing the first book. Dave Mack wrote the second book, and the third and final volume is written by Kevin Dillmore and Dayton Ward, who I'm told actually turned in their manuscript yesterday.
Oh, wow, okay.
And it's just been a big, fun, collaborative project. We actually came up with this idea at a Star Trek convention in Baltimore 2 years ago. Hey, we should all get together and do and pitch some big 50th anniversary project. Literally came up with this plan at a Star Trek convention in Baltimore. Yeah, came up with what is now called the Legacies trilogy. And it's supposed to be this big 3-part epic set back during the original 5-year mission and involving, Klingons and Romulans and all your classic TOS stuff. And like I said, I had the fun of sort of starting off the plot and saying, okay, I've got things going. Yeah, up to you. You wrap it up. Though it's been a very, very collaborative process all along with, emails. Hey, Greg, can you add a scene setting up this? Sure. Hey, we've got a great idea for book 3, but you're going to have to rewrite chapter 2. And I'm like, oh, damn, that is a good idea. Okay, I'll rewrite chapter 2 to set it up. So it's been this big project me, Kevin, Dayton, and Dave have been working on for a while. That's coming out in June. And then in October is the first of the Librarians novels based on the TV show. Are you familiar with the Librarians TV show?
I'll be honest, not until you mentioned it to me in an email. And I've since been I've read up a little bit on it, and I'm still very curious about it. So yeah, I want to find out more.
Yeah, the show just wrapped up its second season. In theory, the book will be coming out next fall in time for the third season. And it's about a team of intrepid, librarians investigating, occult mysteries and such, and keeping the world safe. And yeah, it's a very fun series. I was a fan already. There were originally 3 TV movies of Noah Wyle about a decade ago, which I enjoyed, and which I now I'll have on DVD. And they spun it off into a TV series, which is now filming its 3rd season. And now at Tor Books we're doing the novels, and I just finished writing a book called The Librarians and the Lost Lamp, which has an Arabian Nights theme. They're trying to find Aladdin's lamp. It's very sort of an Indiana Jones. It's the quest for Aladdin's lamp kind of thing.
Sounds great.
And I've actually, as we speak, I'm told I delivered a book recently, and this gives you some idea of the process. I'm supposed to get the comments back from the TV producers next week and make whatever small changes they may ask for or tweaks. And now I need to put together an outline for book 2 for its approval. So book 2 is down the road. So
that's great. That's great that there's more in it for you afterwards. That's really good. Just quickly going back to the Star Trek trilogy as well. The collaboration you talked about sounds really interesting. Are you good friends with a lot of because obviously David Mack and Dayton Ward and all of those guys are very well known Star Trek authors themselves. Are you good friends with those guys, and do you frequently collaborate and things like that?
Oh yeah, we there's at this point there's a stable of Star Trek authors, and we've known each other for years. And not only do we get together at conventions periodically, but not as much as, alas, we used to. It's like I joke that some of these conventions are like our sort of high school reunions. We have a chance to get together and chat. But no, we've hung out. We've known each other for years. We've worked on other projects together. Dave Mack and I, we both used to live in New York. We used to have lunch every week at this one diner on 23rd Street. A bunch of us Star Trek writers used to get together and just hang out and have lunch every. So yeah, I've known Dave for years. We've done 4,400 novels together. Kevin and Dayton, I see at conventions all the time. And we chat on Facebook and we gossip. And I'm also not above, even on projects that are not officially collaborations, we'll get on the phone and make sure we're not stepping on each other's toes or something. And, hi, I'm planning to do something with this. Are you guys planning to do anything with that? Hey, I hear you got a time travel novel coming up. Let's make sure we're on the same page here. It's all very informal, but yeah, we can call each other up and, for example, a true story, Dayton Ward, I did a bunch of Gary Seven novels. Gary Seven's very prominently involved in my con books. Dayton very nicely called me up one day, hey, Greg, I want to do some Gary Seven stuff. I'm not going to be stepping on your toes, which he didn't have to do because, of course, I do not own Gary Seven. I did not invent Gary Seven. I do not have a monopoly on Gary Seven. But it was nice of him. You don't have any Gary Seven. I said, no. Go with it. Run with it. I have no immediate plans to do anything with Gary Seven. So, yeah, so Dayton went around with it. And at one point, I was writing a time travel novel, and I knew that Christopher Bennett was writing a time travel novel. Kind of called it. And we'll even also call it, hi, I'm really kind of stuck here, Christopher Bennett knows the hard science much better than I do. And I occasionally, I'm trying to figure out, how the hard science would work. And I'll call and, we pick each other's brains and chat about stuff.
That's really nice. That's great that you've all got that little community of writers that,
That's a very good word to describe it. We are a community. Yeah, we get together. I mean, I know each other's kids. I've been to some of them, I've been to some of them's weddings, birthday parties and such,
That's really nice because it allows that it all helps ultimately the fans to really get a better experience with the books. Because if everyone collaborates, I think that's really great. And you can tell with how the novels come out, that you can tell that everyone works together really well and they end up producing really good stuff. So that's really great to hear.
Yeah, and like I said, there's a guy named Scott Pearson who writes Star Trek novels. He also works as a copy editor for Pocket Books, freelance. And yeah, Scott ended up copy editing the trilogy. So, and I've been talking to Scott, and I know Scott, and yeah, Scott's a big fan of old Hammer vampire movies too. So we've spent many a night bonding over Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing.
Yeah,
and he's also copy editing and proofreading the Legacy trilogy for us now. So it's a community.
That's great. That's really cool. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Greg, for giving up your time and talking to us about your career and about your work and your contribution to the X-Files anthology. It's been a real thrill. Before you go, I'd like to ask you one thing, which is something that we ask at the end of every podcast on the Xcast, and it's more of a general question called "Do you believe in?" And quite simply, I'm going to ask you, Greg, do you believe in the paranormal?
Honestly, I think I am more of a Scully. I want to believe, but I am a sort of a born skeptic. I think there's more Scully in me than Mulder. I tend to be very skeptical.
You sometimes you need proof.
I would need a lot of proof, especially for ancient Egyptian mummies coming to life. Okay,
which you will be able to see very soon in Greg's story. That's brilliant. Okay, thank you. Right, well, I urge everybody to go out on, as Greg says, February the 15th. And if you're in the UK and you're a UK listener, listen to the podcast about February the 28th, I believe it is. Do go out and buy The Truth Is Out There for Greg's story and several other stories by some really talented writers, which I know that anyone listening to this won't be able to wait for, because it's anything X-Files right now and extra X-Files content we're salivating for. So it's really, really exciting. I can't wait to read about the mummies and everything else. So just enormous thanks, Greg, for giving up your time. I know how busy you are. You have so much going on your plate. So it's a real thrill to speak to you, and it's just can't wait for your story. So thank you so, so much.
Well, thank you for having me on. It's always fun to talk about the stories.
Lovely. Thank you. We'll be back soon, guys, for more files exploring the X-Files as we continue our journey. So do tune in then, and remember, until next time, trust no one. The Xcast, an X-Files podcast, was created by Tony Black and is produced and hosted by Sarah Blair, Kurt North, and Carl Sweeney.
You can find the podcast across social media via Linktree/The Xcast. That's linktr.ee/The Xcast. And join our Facebook group, The X-Files Basement, the Xcast podcast fan group.
Don't forget, you can support the show by becoming a member on Patreon. Our patrons get early access to episodes, behind-the-scenes chats with our hosts, and our thriving community of X-Files, and other premium interviews and specials. To find out more and subscribe, you can go to patreon.com/The Xcast. That's patreon.com/The Xcast.
We are also part of the Film Stories podcast network, full of popular culture shows about film, television, and beyond, including our Millennium series, The Time Is Now, a Millennium Podcast. You can find all of our shows at www.filmstories.co.uk, alongside an array of great writing on film, television, gaming, and more.
Thanks for listening, and remember, deny everything.